That was for you, Bobby. Hey, Pam, how are you? Is this my good side? Can y'all see my good side over here? I don't mean to ignore y'all back there, but I probably won't look back there very often. Side view.
Morning, Amy. I'm muting.
Yeah, lunch. Lunch is first and then learn. Yes. They're all the same, so I was just open one of them and see what you get. They're not all the same. The sandwiches are different, but the trays are the same. Next step. I'm sorry that you guys on Zoom aren't here to eat with us. We're having delicious sandwiches. I can't hear you, Carla. You're muted.
Yeah, I wish I were there. Hi, Amy. It's Kay.
Yes, we did.
Barely hear y'all. I'm going to see how to turn y'all up.
We're going to miss it.
See, do I turn you up over here? On what, babe? There's something now. I don't see a volume on here, do you? I will. Oh, it's these. Or is it those? Oh, there you go.
Does that work?
Yep, that's going up.
Oh, there we go.
They may blow us out of the room now. Thank you, David. Yeah, that's fine. If they have a question, though, I'll be able to hear them now. Thank you, honey. Are y'all ready to get started? Thumbs up from our remote folks. Are y'all ready? Okay. We're going to get started and talk about PIDs, PUDs, and MUDs. Oh my, y'all like that title? I thought it was really creative of me. I think I copied it from somebody, to be honest, but I thought it was a good topic. I think this is something we're seeing more and more of. I was in Decatur this morning and ran across the realtor as I was leaving our office. He was walking across the sidewalk and he said, "What are you doing today?" And I told him, he goes, "Man, I'm glad we don't have any of those in Wise County yet." And that's what I told him. Don't hold your breath. But apparently PIDs, PUDs, and MUDs have not made it out to some of the rural areas. So keep in mind that you may run across agents who have no clue what you're talking about. Okay. So we're going to kind of go through this. Guys, I don't have an eye out of the back of my head. So if you have a question or something, unmute and yell at me. Okay. Thumbs up. Y'all can do that. All right. Awesome. Okay. Yes, just yell at me. Throw something at me, Pam, whatever you need to do. I think I know everybody in the room. I had a great conversation with Jenny before everybody else got here. So I think I know everyone, but I'm Amy Henshaw with Title Resources. And Diana reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, can you put something together about PIDs and PUDs and all that? Because we're having lots of questions." So I did a little research and hopefully what I bring you will be helpful. Okay. So let's start with the definition. What is PIDs, PUDs, and MUDs? And basically, simply put, there are financing mechanisms that developers use to raise funds for utilities and or amenities needed in a new community. It's basically what they are. The developers put them in place to raise money to pay for those things that they need. The decision on whether or not to fund a development can have long-term implications, or how they use it to fund it can have long-term implications for buyers, sellers, agents, lenders, and impact the marketability of the neighborhood. And as we go through this, you'll see how that is. But for you guys, having a basic understanding of the financing mechanism is important to help clients make educated decisions and avoid surprises. Okay, so a MUD. A MUD is a municipal utility district, or an officially classified political subdivision of the state of Texas. What the hell does that mean, right? That's what I thought when I read that. But basically, it's created under the authority of the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, TCEQ, like we all need to know that, and provide water, sewer, drainage, or other utility-related services to new developments. Okay, so that's what they're created under, and that's what they do. They provide those water, sewage, and drainage, or other utilities for a new development. Okay. MUDs typically exist in large master plan developments that when started fell outside the city limits, outside the area where a city was providing utility service. So they decided to put a subdivision out here and there's no utilities ran to it yet. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no anything. And so they need a mechanism to finance that. Okay. So typically a MUD uses the sale of bonds to raise funds needed to build out infrastructure for new developments. The homeowners within the MUD pay off the bonds and pay for utility service through a MUD tax. Okay, so a MUD tax typically eventually will go away once it's paid off, all right? Or if a city annexes it and provides,
Deborah, mute your thing.
then that goes away. Is somebody asking me something over here?
No, I was telling Deborah to mute her microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Really, the only way a MUD goes away is when it's paid off. If the tax is eliminated when it's annexed. No, there isn't. When I was first in the business here in Denton, the only MUD was down in Corinth. Right? It was the only one around, the only one there was, and it was a 30-year bond. So it's about done now. That makes me feel really old. It went away, but it took a while for it to go away. Okay.
Well, one of the neighborhoods out, I think it's a 10-year out in,
Okay, could be.
out on 380.
But there's a 10-year. That's pretty short.
I thought 10 years was really short, and I didn't really buy it, but I could be mistaken.
Well, but you think about that. So if it's a short term, don't you imagine it's going to be a higher amount, right? Because it's like, it's going to be substantial. So we're going to get into looking at that as well. All right. Okay, so a PID, or special district, created by a city or county under the authority of Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Code. I don't know why it's important that we know which is which, but all the research I did, they spell that out to us, okay? The law allows a city or county to charge a tax against properties within a designated area or district to pay for improvements. PIDs can be used to finance the same infrastructure as a MUD, would financing, but are more commonly used to fund additional infrastructure items such as sidewalks, landscape, parking, and recreation. Okay. Some developers will use a PUD instead of an HOA to fund an infrastructure. Okay. One reason would be a PUD tax is tax deductible where HOA dues are not. That makes sense? For the homeowner. For the homeowner. Most PID assessments run 20 to 40 years and payments end when the bonds are paid.
Do we have any of those?
Yes, you do. I have an example in here I'm going to show y'all in just a second. So what do you need to know? Okay. So now you know what they are. How do you know if your property has one, right? That's the other big thing. How do you know if it has one? So buyers of new construction are typically informed of a PID or a MUD whenever they're buying in that subdivision, right? That builder, that developer is disclosing that. But where the problem comes in is on resales. If it's not disclosed in the MLS, how do you know for sure? And how do you know how much it is? The seller should be disclosing, as y'all know, on the seller's disclosure, it asks that question, is it located in A, and they're supposed to disclose. I have a hard time believing they wouldn't know because it is typically a substantial amount of money. So it's supposed to be disclosed there. But the primary way you're going to know is when you get that tax certificate with your commitment package from your title company. So I've sent y'all a sample of what that would look like. So this one, Wind Ridge Phase 2, you asked if we had any, Pam. And this is a PID. And that one. So Jackson Ridge PID, do you see that? In the middle of the page, summary of all accounts. It has your Denton County, City of Aubrey, ISD Denton, and then Jackson Ridge PID. And as you can see on this one, The taxes on this one are $22.47 a year, $2,247 a year. It's a chunk.
Question.
Right. So that's for sure when you're going to be notified is when you get that commitment package and a copy of this tax certificate, it's going to be in there.
Question.
Yes.
Whenever you go, is there a way to see if it's in a PID without going through title? Like, can we just go to the Denton CAD website or something like that?
You can go to the Denton CAD website. I'm looking to see where I turn this up. Hang on so we can hear the question. Right here. So what she asked was, is there a way to know if it's in a PID or a PUD or a MUD or a LMNOP before you get that from your title company? You can go to Denton CAD and look, and it should be listed on there, all the taxing entities that they pay taxes to. So yes.
Thank
can
you.
look there. And then my next question was, because I'm nosy like this. No, we'll get to that in a second.
Where you have the PID or the PUD and then also a city.
Right.
So they'd be on top of it?
There could be both. See, that one pays taxes to the city of Aubrey. Okay.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah.
But they also have a PID tax.
Yeah, okay. You could have both.
You could have both. Because the developer is using that to finance their infrastructure for a period of time. Yep. So you can see them both like that. So the next question I wanted to bring to your attention is, so where are PIDs, PUDs, and MUDs referenced in our 1-4 contract? So this is when I had to call Rebecca, y'all's broker, because in paragraph 6E, it talks about statutory tax districts. And it says, if the property is situated in a utility or other statutory created district providing water, sewer, drainage, or flood control facilities and service, Chapter 49, Texas Water Code requires seller to deliver and buyer to sign the statutory notice relating to the tax rate, bonded indebtedness, standby fees, or other of the district prior to final execution of this contract. I don't think we're doing that. Okay, so my next question was, okay, what form is that? So to be continued, Rebecca is working on, okay, where's this form and why are we not using it? You, expert contract to close person, did you see those used very often? Never, right? It doesn't say there's an out if you don't do it, right? So when you read it, it's just a period. It just says, requires seller to deliver and buyer to sign. So my guess is, it's not on the new contracts that I saw when I reviewed those the other day. My guess is at some point there will be something added to that to make us, another checkbox to make sure we've done it. Okay, so paragraph 6E is also where it talks about the public improvement districts. If the property is in a public improvement, for property code requires sellers to notify buyer as follows. As a purchaser of this parcel of real estate property, you're obligated to pay an assessment to blah, blah, blah. And this is like the CYA. If you can get in your mind what our 1-4 contract looks like. You remember that part on page, let's see. It starts on page 2E, 6, what is it? 6E starts title notices, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and none of us read it, right? That's where these two paragraphs are referenced, okay? Statutory tax districts and then the PID. So they are referenced in our contract. I just don't think we pay much attention to them. And if we're representing buyers, we need to be sure that we are, and that they understand what that looks like. And we can find that information from our Denton CAD. But like I said, at this point, I don't think any of us are doing the statutory tax district notice because we don't even know what it is, right?
Well, that's on our new home area,
Right.
so we're using their contract.
So we're not seeing them yet.
They are, yeah.
But when our resale starts in those
Like
areas,
Harvest has it, it's a
Right.
big deal there.
right, Harvest has it. So that's something you're definitely going to be aware. So it's on Rebecca's radar now to figure out how we're supposed to be doing that. Okay. Because I called her and I was like, okay, Rebecca, what are we doing or not doing? And she goes, I hate it when you call me and ask me these questions. Like, sorry, but I want to know. Right. Keeping me up at night. So there isn't a lot to this other than to say the bottom line is you got to know and you got to be educated when you're showing properties that you think might be in these areas. So first clue, is it new? Second, is it kind of out a little bit from, I know we don't think of anything on 380 as out anymore, but it kind of is. So are you paying attention to where you're showing in those areas? Because those are the ones you need to kind of have your radar up for. So the other CYA document that I think you guys are using is this Texas Realtors General Notice and Notice to Buyers and Sellers, which is the giant CYA that has everything in it that you can imagine. And it does reference this as well. I meant to mark it and I don't think I did. Oh, yes, I did. Statutory tax districts is referenced on page 4 of 5. So, well, it says that we're in there, but we haven't. The indebtedness is. You see what I mean? We're saying they may be in one, but our 1 to 4 says we're supposed to tell them how much, what the bonded rate and what the bonded indebtedness is.
But have we perhaps been relying on what title provides for the buyer?
Possibly, but that's all we send at the commitment time, and this clearly says prior to contract execution. You see what I'm saying? We don't get a commitment until we have an executed contract. So that's where the disconnect is, I think. Okay. So
They need to be addressed on our 1 to 4.
right, and that's what I'm thinking. Eventually, that may be changed on our 1 to 4. So we take that serious or whatever. But that's where it's addressed. So at closing, when you go to your title company to close the deal, we have 3 different forms that we have the buyer sign depending on this, okay? And this says the prescribed notice is for districts located whole or in part within the city limits with a MUD, PUD, or PID. So if they're in the city limits, they sign this one. The prescribed notice is for districts not located in whole or in part in the extraterrestrial district, yes. I always have to think about this. Extraterritorial jurisdiction, that's the part that gets me, of 1 or more home rule, MUD, PUD, or PID municipalities and not located within the city limits. So it isn't an extraterrestrial district, but it's not in the city limits, okay? Then we use this form that they sign at closing, that your closers are making sure gets signed. And this is where it discloses the rate, the amount, the indebtedness, all of that. But this is not until they're sitting at the closing table. So here's my fear. I don't know that it's happened yet because we're not seeing a lot of resale yet in these markets, is that we get to the closing table and they're given this and they go, holy crap, we're not doing that. That's my concern because they're going to be disclosed this at closing. And then the last one is, let me remember here, in the extraterrestrial district and not located in the city limits. So there's 3 different versions of this we're going to get at closing that covers us, but that's once we're to the closing table. So my concern is in that middle ground, what are we doing? Okay. So as practice, if you're a listing agent and you're listing homes in one of these areas, I would have all of that information available to that buyer prior to execution. So my thought is, tell your title company which one of these 3 it is. Let us get that information for you. Let's get it in your listing packet and put it on the MLS. So when you're getting a contract, they can download that form, go ahead and sign it. And then we've done what we were supposed to do there. Does that make sense? But you're going to have to know which is which. Yeah. Does that make sense, Broker K? I can't hear. We can't hear you. She's muted. So I think that in looking at it, to me, that's probably going to be the best way to cover yourself when we start seeing resales in those areas where we know there's PIDs, PUDs, and or MUDs.
Okay, Amy, I unmuted and I agree.
Okay, awesome. Kay agrees. Pam agrees in the
Okay.
back.
I'm going to mute back though.
Robeson Ranch.
Mhm.
even, there wasn't a form, but the listing agent was very, on the agent remarks, what the fees were going to be in addition to, HOA and all that kind of stuff. So it was very upfront.
It was upfront,
Yeah.
but they didn't sign it, right?
No.
So that's where I'm concerned, because it clearly says, and buyer will sign prior to final execution of your contract.
And I can't say I have anything in my file on that client that says that I showed.
That they
them.
knew that, right? Right?
Exactly.
We didn't have them sign that MLS sheet, right? You
Yeah.
don't think about all that, but
Yeah.
when you dig into this and look, that's when you find some loopholes that could give us some heartburn later down the road. Okay. Your closers, whoever you're closing with, I'm sure is going to do a great job on being sure those are done. At the end, the lender's going to want that done too. But where we get in trouble is we're showing in a pit, a putt, or a mud, and we have a qualified buyer, but that tax kicks them out of being able to qualify for it, because that one, what was $2,400 a year, which can make a big difference for some people. It's a couple $100 a month just in a pit or a PUD tax.
Yeah.
Okay. What other questions do y'all have? That was the most fun 20-minute class y'all ever had. But there really isn't a lot more to it than that. Yeah.
Maybe somebody in here probably can answer it. I'm a newer agent, and so we would get this information with the title commitment, which is typically before day 20. So that would be an opportunity to object, and so your buyers can still get out at that opportunity? No?
Well, it's things disclosed on the commitment,
Yeah.
but it really isn't on the commitment.
That's a great question.
That's after we've executed a contract.
And that's after your option typically. So,
I mean, during that option, that's our job, is to dig and find out anything we can, is the way I look at every opportunity to change their mind for whatever reason.
and I would think that a great practice would be, if you think it is in a pit, a putt, or a mud, call your title company before you're going to show and say, hey, can you tell me if this property address is local, and do you know what the rates are? So your buyers know what they're walking into prior to. So, and that we're glad to do that. Absolutely glad to do that for you. But again, it would be on your CAD. The amount tax rates on the CAD, I don't know. I don't think it tells us what the total indebtedness is, and that probably scares somebody to death anyway. Like, I'm sure it's in the millions of dollars or how many years and all that. But having more information, so at least you know they've been disclosed that it is they're buying a house that does have this additional tax.
So I have a question.
Yep.
With a mouthful. So the developer is allowed through a bond to use money to develop the community. Who's monitoring how that is used?
Well, because it goes to the tax entity, because it goes to the tax authority, I think they are monitoring how that is used. Because typically they're eventually going to take those over anyway. The city is going to end up being the one who's running that, and they now have street utilities and all that. It's kind of, to me, it's like it's a patch between when it becomes in the city and when it isn't. Right? It's that time frame between.
It almost sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
It almost does. It almost does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, they've been using them for years. And you think about the one in Corinth that we're also familiar with. Lantana has them as well. Lantana has other fun things too, but that one is, the transfer tax that Lantana has, AKA they call it the divorce tax is the other thing they call it. So, but the main thing for us as agents is just to be sure they know it's disclosed. Let them make that decision, but they need to know what they're in for sure.
Can I ask a question?
I've not seen one blow up at the table yet over this, but I think it's just a matter of time and more resale happening in the areas that have them. For sure.
I have a question.
Yep.
So once you pay off the PID, MUD, whatever it's called, once it's paid in full for that particular house, is there any other costs associated in the future with transfer? Like, say they sell their house and it's paid in full?
No, it's not like it's not assessed per house. It's for the entire subdivision. And once that indebtedness is all paid off, that tax falls off. It's no longer on there. So there's no transfer or any, it's done once the indebtedness is paid in full.
So say 123 Main Street owes $2,000 a year in that special tax. Okay, I get it. I get what I'm saying now. Never mind. I get it.
Awesome. I was having that conversation with somebody this morning about thinking, I'm sorry?
Every house owes an equal amount.
No, it's based on the value of the property. So if I have $1 million house on the street and you have a $500,000 house on the street, I'm paying more because my assessment's higher. It's a rate.
So who sets, who's the governing authority on,
Who set the rate?
yeah, who sets the rates and who allows the bid or the PUD or whatever to take place?
The authority over that piece of property. So the taxing authority at Denton County or wherever, they are able to put a PUD in place with, over that authority, for that authority.
So they're the ones that would grant that.
Mhm.
I used to work for a developer and all of our projects were PID.
All of them were
Yeah.
PID projects. Public improvement districts. That's
Is there a
how they're
way to-
done for the most part? Yeah.
In the MLS, is there a way for us to like say we don't want any PIDs or PUDs or whatever those are called to come up in our search criteria?
I don't think there is, because I don't think, it's been a long time since I put a listing in the MLS, but I don't believe there's like a yes or no checkbox that you could,
And then you're relying on the listing agent.
to check it properly, right? So I don't think, I don't think there is, Deanna, I don't believe so.
Okay.
All right. Okay, what else? There's one for MUDs, but not PIDs or PUDs.
No kid or put. So the takeaway I think I'm getting is that Rebecca's working
We're working
on
to,
an addendum or something.
no, we're talking about how should we be CYAing this one paragraph is what we're talking about. Yeah, it's what's going to be the best way to cover ourselves, because it clearly says sign it before we have a contract. So you nice people that are out there in Zoom land, I have extra handouts that I will leave for you guys with Beth at the front desk if you want to grab them. Or I'm glad to email it to you. Just shoot me an email, amy@trnt.net. Okay, what else? Any other burning title questions? Any exciting title things happening? I know it's such a gripping subject.
Explain to us again, because I've had it explained to me a million times, but just again, because I might not be the only one that's clueless.
Okay.
Tell me about the survey deletion clause,
Survey deletion.
or, you know what I'm talking.
Yes, I do. I talk about this clause all the time. It's one of my favorites.
I just missed it.
Okay. So the clause we're talking about is, I want to get it in my contract here so I can reference it properly.
I just always struggle with how to explain that to my clients.
Sure. It is kind of confusing. I will give it that. But why can't I find where it is?
Explain it to me.
Isn't it 6A? Okay. 8 on the contract. Okay, so here's what it says. 6A8 says, the standard printed exception. So does everybody know what an exception is?
Let's define it.
We don't cover that shit. That's what an exception is. Sorry, Zoomland. But exception means we don't cover that. If I'm accepting to something, you get your title commitment and you read it, and there's an exception, that means we're not covering that. In an insurance policy of any kind, if it's an exception, that means we ain't covering that shit. Okay, so the standard printed, we ain't covering that shit. As to discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area or boundary lines, encroachments or protrusions or overlapping improvements, now we have a choice, will not be amended or deleted from the title policy, or will be amended to read shortages in area. So if I'm amending it, I'm getting coverage for everything listed up there except shortages in area, because now my exception is going to read shortages in area.
Still sounds like double talk.
I know it does, but just think of it like this. If I choose I want it amended, I'm getting more coverage. If I choose I don't want it amended, it's going to be the standard printed exception that takes exception to discrepancies, conflicts, boundary lines, encroachments or protrusions or overlapping improvements.
But if you have a survey,
Uh-huh.
get a new survey done, boundaries are clear on the survey, but you're not covering them.
Well, if we make any exception to anything on there, if we're saying, you know, this, if we have a clear survey and there's nothing on there that we're accepting to, we're covering it. But let me tell you where this comes in handy. Okay, so this is my favorite horror story. Horror gentleman in Wise County who, I always have to start with Wise County because you know that goes another route when you say that. So we had a gentleman in Wise County. I think it was 20 acres. I think it was 20 acres. He had bought, say he bought it 7 or 8 years ago. Okay. When he bought it, he used an existing survey from the people who had it done 5 or 6 years prior. He used an existing survey, closed on the property. He had it 7 or 8 years. And this time he built this barn. He put up some fences. He did whatever he did, and he gets ready to sell it. Well, Mr. Buyer comes and looks at it and says, you know, I think I want a new survey. I'll pay for it. Pays for the new survey. Lo and behold, the survey he had used was incorrect, and he built his barn halfway on his neighbor's property.
Oh.
So had he had overlapping improvements and boundary line coverage,
If he had a new survey,
maybe, but maybe the survey would have been wrong again. Surveys are wrong. I have one right now we're fighting over, 2 different surveyors arguing over where the property line truly is. Okay. Does it happen a lot? No, probably not. It happens often enough that the insurance, TDI said, you know what, this was an additional coverage that y'all could offer that would help people out when it does happen. It is regulated just like all of our other rates. It's 5% on a residential piece of property, and it is 15% on land and commercial of the base premium. So on $200,000 title policy, it's about $80 for that additional coverage. That's where it comes in handy. So what happened on that transaction? It's a nightmare. Fortunately, the neighbors were friends, and so they worked out a boundary line adjustment. So neighbor who had a barn that he didn't really have on his property said, well, you know what, I'll give up the back if you'll give up road frontage to get your barn back on your property so you don't have to tear down your $100,000 barn and move it. That was nice of him, right? But that was the easy part. The hard part was both mortgages had to be amended. New surveys had to be done on both pieces of property. New appraisals had to be done on both pieces to be sure that by doing this, it didn't negatively affect them. It was a nightmare. 7 or 8 months later, we finally got it closed for that man, but that's where that coverage would have been handy.
so if
Who paid for that?
used survey,
The used survey.
the one that he was gonna use,
Mhm.
you know, previous, and he didn't get a new one, the guy who built his farm on the wrong thing.
Uh-huh.
In his title commitment, he did not have that. coverage.
Correct.
But is it because it was a reused survey that y'all did not cover it? Or is there?
Fortunately, we didn't close the previous sale, but he didn't have coverage. And we still, on an existing survey, we still may give that coverage if there's not been any changes, if it's a fairly recent survey, we still may give it.
It would have had to have had an exception to it for him to be in the bind.
Right, right. Or he didn't have the coverage. He built it over the property line, which he thought was his property, and he didn't have the additional coverage, or we would have covered it because we insured that survey as true and correct. And that's
Who
when we
paid
are-
for all those changes? Like
I'm sorry?
all the, who paid for the new appraisals and all that long list of things you just listed out?
The
Who
seller
had to
did.
pay for that?
The seller who
Wow.
paid for all those appraisals and all that stuff. It was the seller.
So the surveyor who made the mistake didn't have to pay?
The great thing about that is that was 2 transactions ago, and that was not insured on his transaction. A survey is only for the GF that it's being used on, and this was 2 transactions later, so Mr. Seller had no recourse on that previous survey.
Gosh.
Again, a reason to get new surveys
And the coverage.
and the coverage. So that make it any clearer? It is kind of negative talk, but remember, you don't cover that, shit's an exception. So if we want the additional coverage, we're going to need to ask for it there. And then the only exception would be shortages in area.
And just blanket estimate, did I hear you say on a 200,000?
So if you figure what your title policy premium is on any of one of our apps, it's going to be about 5% of that base
And then
premium.
land would be like
15 and commercials 15. What else? You're welcome. Y'all always like my version. Yeah, I mean, I'm a proponent of new, well, my son works for a surveyor, but even before that, I was a proponent of getting a new survey for any property because then, yes. Well, we years ago when I worked for Linda and Jimmy, a builder we worked with built a house on the wrong lot in Crum because he went off of an old survey. And that surveyor was dead, so we didn't have any recourse whatsoever on him, but it was a nightmare. It was, litigation and a really high sales price for the land he built the house on that he didn't really own. And yeah, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. But you live and learn, right? You were either winning or learning every day, right? Winning or learning. So, okay, Zoomland, that's all I got. Good to see everybody. Bye, Carla. I hope I answered some of your questions. I think you were somebody who was wanting more information.
Could we do a class on, if I have a buyer for land, tell me how, as an agent, I can educate my client about rollback taxes.
Okay, so a rollback tax class. Okay. Those are fun. Nobody ever wants to pay them, but you're going to have to if change of use happens, if you trigger change of use.
Because it affects their, their investment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's usually 3 or 5 years. I don't remember what the statute is now. Is it 3 now?
I don't know, I didn't know it switched from 5.
You thought it was 7?
Yeah, I thought it was 5.
I thought it's either 3 or 5. I heard something that they were changing how far they could go back. I'll do some research for that, Penny, see what I can get for you. All right, this was not CE approved. I got to add more stuff to it to get it to an hour at least. So what other things might be helpful for PIDs? What else did I not cover that you go, darn, I wish she would have jumped into this topic? Or if I brought you a list of all the ones that are in Denton County, that'd be helpful, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And I know Chris Rostrom is our expert here, but I had a lead for those row townhouses that Kimmy had listed over in down the road. How do you even do contracts for those? I mean, I have no clue.
Is it not a condo contract?
It is now.
Uh-huh.
But when the lead came in and I started reaching out to Chris and all that kind of stuff, knowing I would refer to him.
Uh-huh.
But I don't even know how those work.
I haven't looked at one in a long time. I used to deal with them a lot when I was in Coppell because we sold lots of condos, but I think it's just a condo contract, a promulgated tract form for condos.
Supermarket or something like that.
Oh, I never heard them called that. I'll do some research on that too. I want to learn about condo contracts.
5 house properties, another had 6.
But when a condo, you're just buying the interior.
No, they were buying the whole thing.
Oh, the
The
whole
whole enchilada.
land, everything.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I don't know. I'll have to do some research. I don't know the answer. It's a new one.
There's a lot of things have to, and it could happen even to a new agent, but even as many years as I've been involved in this, there are things that I've never been involved in that I'd like to learn.
We learn something new every day, winning or learning, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Dan.
Yep.
That area off of McKinney where you get Copus is called Vacation Village, I guess. That's not in the city.
I don't think so. I know they get fire service from the city, but I don't know if it's in, I don't think it's in the city limits.
Do they have some kind of a separate utility?
I know they don't have water right now, from what I understand. Like they're having to ship in their water because probably when that was developed, I don't know this for sure, my guess would be Vacation Village. It's a mobile home community and kind of shanty houses and stuff back in there. My guess is the developer that put that together didn't put any utilities in. And over the years, people have been pulling up their trailer and hooking up to whatever they had. And as it's gotten bigger, I would imagine whatever they had has gotten overused. Is anything even for sale out there? Can you buy anything there? I mean, I've never seen a listing come up out there in Vacation Village. Can it?
You don't see them. I had
Oh, you got to go looking, huh?
somebody that was interested in
Uh-huh.
selling a piece of property.
Wanting to buy something. out there.
They wouldn't sell it. They
Ah.
wouldn't sell it.
Interesting.
So,
Come to think of it, my son said he was doing a survey out there not too long ago, so they must be selling some stuff out there.
there's some homes out there that they're not the modular, the mobile homes. There's some homes that are going in there that are actually
Brick.
brick.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what their utility situation is, but last I heard it was really bad.
Yeah.
Like they were shipping in water to them. So I don't know. Okay, guys, that's all I got. Sometimes I don't know is a great answer. Thank y'all. Good to see you, Patty. Haven't seen you in a while. Nice to meet you. David, good to see you again. Can I help you with anything? Everything rocking along okay? You good?
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome. See you later.
Amy, can I have your email address again, please?
You can, Amy, AMY, at trnt.net.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Shoot me an email if you want that package. I'll send it to you guys.
I will. Thank